It's time for some hard truth. The PlayStation 4 and Xbox One are about to be obsolete. They are completely last gen, and we just saw the first major game be canceled for it. I think it's interesting because the last gen still feels so recent, but these consoles are already dying. What's up, gamers? Dreamcastguy here. Now, I want to talk about this because it's interesting to me as somebody that has been gaming my entire life. I've watched a lot of consoles come and a lot of consoles go, but last gen, the Xbox One and the freaking PlayStation 4, they stuck around for almost a decade, giving us literally thousands of very, very good and very legendary games. Many things that came out just a couple years ago not only feel recent, they still look and play so great. But let's start things off with what really stirred up this mess. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a giant thumbs up and share it with your friends. Also subscribe. Now let's begin with the big ol' spooky DC truth. Gotham Knights has just been canceled for the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One. Now, originally, this was supposed to come to all platforms. It seems like it was something that was optimized to work on last gen, current gen, next gen, whatever you want to call it. Well, this trailer came out that made the city still look very, very dated. For the fact that this is supposed to be a next-gen only game, this trailer was released yesterday, by the way. This isn't something from like years ago. This is a brand new trailer. A lot of people seemed a bit shocked that this game is supposed to be next-gen only because it doesn't really look that advanced. I'm excited for it because, honestly, I'm a huge freaking DC Comics fan. I mean, obviously, I'm wearing my Nightwing t-shirt even in this, but what they said in their statement is that they're trying to provide players with the best possible gameplay experience. And understandably, this statement was met with a tremendous amount of shock and, in some cases, straight up anger. Like all the replies you see here, this is BS. Not everyone can afford a PlayStation 5 or an Xbox Series X. Xbox One X and PlayStation 4 shouldn't even be categorized as last generation. They're almost as strong as the Series S. Like, it's interesting to me that people are almost pleading with like this. How is Red Dead Redemption 2 running on a PlayStation 4 and this game seemingly can't run on a PlayStation 4? It feels like everybody is kind of just stunned because somebody had to be first. Now, I've lived through every console generation. I was born when the original frickin' NES came out. I've seen things come and things go. And every time there is the beginning of another console generation, there is always that bit of growing pains. I guess some people are shocked because, more than anything else, the scarcity of it. Next gen is here, but the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series X is not even in stores. They don't even have enough stock to be out there and readily available. The fact that it's getting more and more exclusive games, I feel like is where most of the anger sort of sits upon. But more than that, I'm curious because we've seen this in the last generation. What I mean is the PlayStation 3 and the Xbox 360, it had a similar sense of shock to it. The 360 and the PlayStation 3 were just huge, phenomenal successes that I feel like first managed to pierce into the mainstream gaming ethos. It was when people started to basically all buy Call of Duty. It's when people started to have those lining up for midnight launches to get the latest Halo and stuff like that. Even though gaming obviously existed before that, it's when I really felt like everything kind of multiplied in popularity. So when Sony and Microsoft straight up said that, hey, the freaking next generation is beginning, there was a little bit of confusion with it, especially because, keep in mind, the freaking PlayStation 4 did not play PlayStation 3 games. Even though the PlayStation 3 was incredibly popular, it had zero backwards compatibility, which left people feeling very, very, very cut and left out in the cold. Now, I don't think that's going to happen this time. Obviously, we see this more slow transition of generations this time. But even now, some people seem to be happy about this simply because somebody had to be first. Like right here, Gotham Knights is skipping last gen, and they put the Giga Chad gif here, or the Giga Chad meme. I love this meme a lot. I talked to one of my developer friends, though. MVG. MVG is a guy who creates games on all sorts of different platforms. He has officially launched multiple games now on the PlayStation 4, the PlayStation 5, the Xbox, and obviously Nintendo Switch. He is a guy who knows a lot inside and out of these consoles, and he said, good. I'm glad they're canceling the last gen versions. And the whole methodology behind this is that game development is becoming more and more expensive. Like, I feel like that's something that on the ground level we sort of forget because these games seem to be just as good as they've always been. The quality is very slowly increasing, but truly consider it. We don't really have realistic graphics to a crazy degree, like things have been pretty steadily going up notch by notch. Year by year, things get slightly better resolution, slightly better frame rate, slightly better controls and leveling mechanics and stuff like that. But there hasn't been that huge leap where suddenly it's like, oh, we're in the future. I'm so happy. But it's making me think that this is going to hopefully unlock the potential of the next-gen consoles. I do think that right now, people are being held back by the last gen. And I think what's happening is that as development gets longer and more expensive, a lot of these projects are no longer taking 2 years to make. Most of these major AAA games are taking 4 years or 5 years to make. And at some point, there has to be somebody to draw the line in the sand and say, okay, this is where the future begins. Now, this is still strange to me because from a financial aspect, there is so many hundreds of millions of PlayStation 4s out there. Like, truly consider the fact that isn't there like 120 million PlayStation 4s sold? And then there's another, there's rumors, they've never released official hard numbers, but there's rumors that it's like 50 million or 60 million Xbox Ones were sold. Like, collectively, that means that there is 180 million possible consoles that could be accessible markets. And these developers are essentially saying, we are more concerned with making good games that are future-proof, that are going to look good in 5 years because they're next-gen only, than accessing that current demographic. Now, as stunning as this is to me, I'm not too shocked because I did experience this with the PlayStation 3 to PlayStation 4 and also the Xbox 360 to Xbox One jump. There was this time period when Ubisoft was trying to release stuff everywhere. Activision was trying to release stuff everywhere. They were really trying to accommodate and basically say a game for you, a game for you, a downgraded version for this generation, an upgraded version for this generation. Two games that really come to mind for me first and foremost were Titanfall and Infamous Second Son. These were games that were primarily marketed as next gen during the time, and they really pushed the boundaries at the time. Like, I thought it was interesting how much Titanfall managed to have these tight aiming controls and huge robots and really interesting flashy particle effects that couldn't really work on the previous generation. Like, there was an Xbox 360 version of Titanfall, but holy crap did it look bad. And then Infamous Second Son, that game was so bright and flashy and gorgeous, and it really started to sell those new systems. It really started to be the commercial that it needed to be that said, this stuff is great, and it's so great, you can't play it anywhere else. Right now, the last generation is beginning to die off simply because I think they realize that it can be more financially viable just to focus on what's next, on what's new, and then wait for the gamers to catch up. What really sticks in my mind is that yesterday I did a big video talking about the Sony financial reports. I'll link that in the description box, and at the end of the video, I'll put one of those little item card things right here. Now, in that, they talked about the fact that the PlayStation 5 has now sold 20 million consoles, or 19.3 million consoles, and it's also sold, and here I feel like is the very important part, 70 million freaking games were sold. Software for freaking consoles. And this was for 1 quarter. They sold 70 million games on PlayStation consoles just in the last 4 months. 3 months. This is huge. And I feel like game developers are starting to see the writing on the wall. You can focus on next gen. You can prepare for next gen. If you make a game that looks good enough, if it plays good enough, if it's flashy enough, it's going to sell and sell and sell. And as people eventually find these consoles, they're going to buy your product. At least that seems to be the theory to it. Now, I'm curious what's going to affect something like the Nintendo Switch. The Nintendo Switch right now, it's starting to be the real rumblings of the Nintendo Switch 2 about what's coming next. And Nintendo is very, very clear to essentially say, hey, we're worried about how you even move forward after the Switch. I mean, does the Switch 2 have to be backwards compatible? Does the Switch 2 have to suddenly upgrade every single one of the thousands of Nintendo Switch games? What is the correct path? this entire generational gap is both a very good thing and a very bad thing, because in a lot of ways, it's great that we're seeing those first hints that people care about the future, that developers who are working on these big 4-year and 5-year projects are shooting for the moon. But it does kind of suck because I am incredibly sympathetic. It sucks that you can't just buy a PlayStation 5. Like, truly consider that more than anything else. Finding an Xbox Series X, finding a Series S, finding a PlayStation 5, whether it is the digital version or the disc version, these things are still way too scarce. But companies are starting to say it's next gen or go to hell. And I'm curious how many people are going to stop gaming because of this. How many people are going to pivot to trying to play stuff on PC? How many people are going to say, screw the generations? I'm curious the final effects at the end of next year. But tell me your thoughts in the comments down below. These have just been my off-the-cuff sort of ideas, because this is something that I think it came faster than I thought. Like, it's crazy that it's already been almost 2 years since the PlayStation 5 came out, and that the Xbox Series X has been sitting on my shelf here for so long. But I guess as excited as I am, I'm curious. I'm very curious. But please tell me your thoughts in the comments down below. Also, like this video, or you're a slut. Also, please be sure to subscribe. You guys rock. Keep dreaming. Thanks so much for watching that video. If you want to see something else, you can always click this link to see what I put up last, or, subscribe and see what's coming up next. Also, I promise that whatever I do, it'll try not to suck.